All right, what's going on, animal fans? We are back with another episode of the Animal Pakcast. I am your host. My name is Joseph Percher. As always, with me, Gary G6 Turner, animal athlete. And this time we have two special guests. We have James Brown, top prep coach, and we have top Olympia 212 contender and runner up, Mr. Derek Lunsford.
What's up, guys?
I
What's going
appreciate
on,
you guys
guys?
having me on.
Thanks for coming on.
Yes, it's an honor.
So,
Thank you.
for a little background for maybe some of the listeners or fans that don't know, James has been Derek's coach. I don't want to speak for you guys, but pretty much since the time that Derek started bodybuilding and started training, there's been no deviations from that all the way up through the amateur ranks, through the pro ranks, and now, as a front runner for the 212 Olympia. So I know that we wanted to touch on, going back a little bit, we wanted to touch on, the most recent Olympia, and then, moving into, I'm assuming you guys are starting prep here pretty shortly. So we want to just touch on last year's Olympia and then roll into what would be this year's Olympia. I know Gary had a couple of specific questions written down. So we'll start off with those and we'll just roll with it kind of roundtable style.
Yeah, basically, I mean, it's the question that everybody's asking, whether you're on a podcast or not. But do you guys even think that there will be an Olympia? And what I mean by it is the contest, not the expo. Let's discount the expo for now. But do you think that we're even going to get on stage this year? Are you preparing for it to maybe be pushed back, or how are you guys going about that?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because I think there's probably only a handful of people that have the real answer. But I think in my personal opinion, I think there will be an Olympia. I'm starting to lose faith that it'll happen at the same time frame that it does every year, simply because, I mean, who's going to be there at this point? The 5 people that qualified from last year and the one show that went down? I mean, there's just, there's been nobody qualified thus far, and the time frame's getting shorter and shorter for the qualification show. So I think that there's probably going to be a time frame adjustment on that to make it so there's more opportunity for the quality of competitors that normally would be there and qualified to have that opportunity.
I'm not going to just be a devil's advocate here. I'm more of like an optimist, in the way I think about the show. And first and foremost, as professionals, I think we need to be prepared, preparing for that 20-week mark, because I think we're 20 weeks out right now. Yeah. So I think we need to continue on as if it's going to happen. And if we catch word or like someone says, hey, officially that we're going to move it back, then we need to make adjustments. But as of right now, I think we need to be the professionals that we are and, go for that show in September. Now, truthfully, I actually believe it's possible. Like, I really believe, right now the date is still the same. And I actually believe that, kind of going against what James said, not that I totally disagree with him or anything, because it does look like, pushing it back might be an option. But I think that there will be enough qualification as far as like the competitors and whatnot. I think there's already plenty of people that are qualified now, not to mention that there will be several shows July, August, and September, even right before the Olympia, like the New York Pro would be the weekend before. Now, that says a couple of things. It says that there's going to be enough qualifications possible, but is that enough time to market and get a return on the Olympia itself? That's right. The question that I think is like, no, I'm not the one running the Olympia, so I don't know that part.
James, I thought that you brought up an interesting point too. I mean, I guess there would be plenty of people qualified, but then it's not even just a numbers game. Then you worry about the quality of the lineup. At least I would. Because one of the, for the Open, one of the chances to secure a qualification is the Arnold. A top 3 at the Arnold, I believe, does it. And they don't have a 212. So now you're looking at it, and it's like there really is a limited chance. I'm sure they could do something retroactive where if you place, XYZ at one of these shows last year or whatever the case is. But it'll be interesting to see how they do that moving forward, if it is delayed or if other shows are pushed back. It's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with just like what you said. when shows start getting off the ground. You know, the Chicago Pro, I think, is scheduled for 7 weeks out right now, but Chicago's still on a full lockdown. So there's no, you know, the hopes is that that show goes in 7 weeks, but there's no guarantee for anything at this point. And I think that's going to play a big key is when shows start getting off the ground. And the problem that I see with a lot of this is the shows that are scheduled from now to then are in the areas that are being on the most lockdown. New York, Chicago, California. They're not in Nebraska. They're not in,
They should be.
Iowa. They're not in areas where the states are opening back up. You know, there's not an Arkansas Pro. Arkansas opened up last Friday, you know. So I think that has a big key in it. But I think there's another big factor in when the Olympia goes and how it goes. And I think this is something that all of us like to not admit, but this is a business. It's a financial obligation. And depending on what the cost is to move the date for the venues in Vegas, or if there's an opportunity, or if they're still held accountable for the September dates, you know, a lot of those things are going to come into play. Like that venue could very well go, oh yeah, you can move the date. You're still paying us for all your days in September because we're open.
Yep.
And at that point, the promoter has to go, whoa, you know, maybe we make the best out of this as is, or I lose a ton of money. But, you know, that's a decision for, you know, the Manions, the promoter of the show, all those people to put their heads together and go, okay, are we willing to take a loss this year? And of course, this is all, you know, I don't have the inside scoop, so I'm not saying this is or isn't happen, but it's an opportunity for them to go, okay, do we put money first? Do we put the show first? How do we, you know, put all those things together? And, you know, it's all speculation from everything outside of probably, you know, 5 to 10 people who are keeping their lips real sealed at this point. So.
Yeah, it's funny, James, that you mentioned about the business part, because, you know, I'm about to start prep, obviously, on the amateur circuit, and Joe's been in prep for what, 24 weeks now, Joe?
Yeah, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's still not done a show.
Yeah,
all
still no
Joe's
show,
shows
yeah.
have been pushed back, and, you know, so there's a lot of arguments over, you know, even when I say I'm starting to prep, and there's people that, why there's gonna be no shows and everything. And the one thing that people keep bringing up is that there might be venues to have the shows at, but they're questioning now if promoters are going to want to have it. Say they can't have a crowd. So now they're going to be worried about, you know, not being able to make as much money as they once did from the crowd. And I actually said, we're going to find out which promoters actually love bodybuilding and which ones are actually just businessmen this year. And I spoke to I don't know, he's from Minnesota and North Dakota. Obviously, North Dakota is not really that affected. He said he's got a show in October, and he says, come hell or high waters, pending that the government allows him to have his building open, he's having it with whatever restrictions that he has. And I'm like, man, I'm just flying into freaking North Dakota to freaking compete for this qualifier if it's the only option. I mean, I don't care.
Right.
I'm crazy. So, you know, but you're right. It is a business, and there are concerns with it more so than just being opened up and allowed, because there's going to be modifications. You can't pack the house with thousands of people like you normally do, where you're going to make, you know, X amount of money, whatever they make, you know, on the ticket sales. You know, I think
another aspect of this financially too, as a promoter and as the organization of the NPC, you have to look at it, you know, like Major League Baseball is $1 billion corporation. They right now are not able to do anything even without fans because they can't secure the testing for the athletes. So now you have to look at it as like, you know, is one of these promoters or the NPC going to be able to step up and say, yes, we're able to provide testing for all the athletes. We've all been backstage at a show. It is the complete opposite of what they're telling us to do right now.
Oh,
so
it's not social distancing.
Even if there's no audience or no crowd, that's still going to be really difficult logistically. And like Gary said, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm praying that there's going to be a show that I can go display what I've been working on. You know what I mean? But,
you know, here's another thought too.
It's just crazy.
Another thought too is that since I came into bodybuilding back in 2015, there was talk about doing like broadcasting it for like pay-per-views and things like that. I mean, this could be the opportunity this year to test
They
it
have
out
to.
too.
That's a great point,
Saying,
dude. That's
I'm
a
not
great
saying
point.
it's going to happen. All I'm saying is if worse comes to worse, like James said, where they have to have the venue that date, they're going to force them to pay it. They might just sell pay-per-view. You never know, man. I mean, this is a weird thing we never thought would happen.
And I think that works in the pro leagues and for the big shows.
Yeah.
But you know, these local promoters and I do agree with you, Gary, what you're saying of who loves bodybuilding and who's a businessman. But at the same time, I know that like on the first of every month, I got to pay my mortgage.
Yep.
And some of these guys can't afford to take a $30,000 bath on a local show. They would be not paying their personal mortgage and things like that. So I think that that's going to come down to it, because a local show is not going to make any money broadcasting it. It's all off, you know, and I have a lot of friends that promote local shows. And, you know, for a lot of you competitors out there that are listening that think, oh, you know, I'm giving them so much money on ball, they're making a killing, they're making this. Like, promoters really don't make any money off athletes. They hope to break even off their athletes and then hope to turn a profit on the people coming in the door to watch the athletes. And sometimes the people coming in the door to watch the athletes are still only making it up to where they break even. So, you know, I know that that's a common misconception out there of how much these shows cost, how much work goes into them, like that type of thing. So I think that's where we're gonna fall is, you know, how much of a bath some of these guys are willing to take on shows or the risk associated with it. But I'm hoping as this starts tapering out, it starts fading out quicker and quicker and quicker, and these shows will get back on normal plan.
I'll tell you this just real quick. I had 2 guest posings booked. One was actually in April or Mayish time, and clearly, obviously, it got canceled. Well, not canceled, but the date got moved back to July 25th. That's the Grand Rapids show up in Michigan, and I've guest posed there the last couple of years. So they locked in a later date, July 25th. So that one's a go. I'm still going to be guest posing at that one. And then the weekend later, I believe it's 1 weekend later, it will be the Knoxville Classic in Tennessee. I'll be guest posing at that one too. So there's 2 shows that I'm lined up to do guest posings for. So that tells me that things are going to, you know, start getting back that way. But yeah, I think it depends state by state when things are opening up, like we keep saying.
They should just move the Olympia to freaking Wyoming, man. They got like 5 deaths there, man. We'll go.
Yeah, man.
Tell us the place.
Let's do it.
But okay, so you said that you're 20 weeks out. Yeah, that's about right for the Olympia. So have you guys like officially started prep now, or is it like an ease-in process? How do you guys work that right now?
Yeah, when he tells me to lock it down, I have no choice.
We started, about 4 or 6 weeks ago, just kind of getting back in routine, cleaning things up, started ramping training back in harder. Derek started training with a new guy down in Tampa that's really pushing his intensity a lot. Fantastic training sessions. He sends me a lot of those videos, and it's a whole different training methodology than years past for sure. Very, very.
Can you guys? I'm going to cut you off. Can you guys touch on that, because I feel like Derek has gone through such a dynamic change with the training. We've seen almost every end of the range, every extreme with Derek's training. So can you touch on that a little bit?
I'll let James speak first, just because he's not there with me all the time training.
Yeah.
You know, he hears a little bit here and there, but I'll let him give his 2 cents, and then I'll tell you what.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah. So when Derek first started, you know, obviously me and him trained together some. He was very local to me at that point, and we pushed intensity pretty hard. You know, as much as a guy can. A lot of times he was training by himself, and as we all know, you know, even the Ronnie Colemans of the world training solo all by themselves in Anytime Fitness and, you know, middle of nowhere Indiana are only going to push intensity so hard. But he was pushing intensity pretty hard. We were pushing intensity pretty hard. and it worked very well. He grew a lot very early in the process. You know, he moved to Florida, started training with Ben, totally different training methodology. You know, he learned a lot about his body, learned a lot how to actuate different muscles. But I think in general, he wasn't improving like he had the years prior. And I think that's just his body responds a little better to a higher training stimulus. But there was a lot of benefit to what he learned training with Ben, because now as he's starting to increase in training intensity again, he's also able to connect better, you know, push better, activate the muscles better that he wants to, but with that intensity in mind. So it's kind of combining the best of both worlds, in my opinion, for what works really well for Derek. You know, and I think it's going to be a great asset for him coming into this Olympia, assuming his body doesn't respond too well and we show up at like 240 pounds.
Jesus Christ, bro.
You
I'm
know,
still gaining muscle. It's crazy. Almost trying not to, you know, trying to keep the weight down. But yeah, anyway, that's pretty much nail on the head. Whenever I first started training as like for bodybuilding, you know, I kind of didn't really know what bodybuilding was when I first met James. You know, he had a supplement store at the time. I walk in and I'm kind of like, I'm this wrestling kid that comes in, you know, from transfers colleges and said, hey, I'm a 140-pound wrestler. How can I get to be like maybe 160? You know, I said, I don't want to get too big, you know. I don't want to get stretch marks. I don't want to be, you know, a bodybuilder. I don't want to get crazy huge. I want to be more like the chiseled abs and the model look. That was my first mentality, my first thought of, I want to maybe gain like 10 or 15 pounds of solid, you know, lean muscle tissue and be ripped for the summer. Then I caught the bug and I wanted to push harder and harder. And this is not to just blow smoke. A lot of it was watching the animal videos, you know, getting pumped up, some of the bodybuilding motivation and some of the stuff that Evan would put out or whoever from Animal. So that's when I caught the bug for bodybuilding, and I said, okay, I need something to focus on. I need something to compete in, to really give me an extra reason to push harder, especially like on a leg day that, I mean, if you're just getting ready for the summer, why you got to train legs real hard, you know? So I was like, I got to keep this going, and I need another reason, another purpose than just looking good, whatever. So I talked to James, met him. He was like the only guy that I felt like really would have my back and guide me kind of in the training and the nutrition, all that. So that's why when I met him, I was like, look, like I trust you. You know what you're doing. I'm going to listen to you just like I was as a wrestler, but apply it to bodybuilding instead. And so first of all, that relationship worked out really well, obviously, from the get-go. He put up with a lot of my dumb questions, and I mean, we could go back and I had some silly questions and he said, no, look, you asked it one time. I told you, you never asked it again because you retained it and you know, you paid attention and you just moved forward. So my training style at the time, you know, was more like a wrestler trying to be a bodybuilder. You know, we did a lot of, it's not CrossFit type training, but really intense athletic, you know, style training, you know, a lot of agility, a lot of, for example, instead of doing pull-ups or lat pull-downs, I rarely did those. I did more muscle-ups, like push-ups, like 500 push-ups a day and running all over campus, this and that. So that's the way I kind of was in the beginning. And I realized with his guidance, he's like, look, you got to start eating every couple hours. You need to start, like, you know, learning how to train the muscles and not just go to the gym and you know what I mean, bouncing all over the walls. And like you said, I moved to Florida, and it went from, okay, this intense, you can call it more like a Jay Cutler style bodybuilding training, because that's who I looked up to more. Him and Jay and Phil were two of the guys, obviously, I looked up to at the time, back in 2013, 14. And then, you know, I started to develop what I thought was best for me. And, you know, if I did something a little bit different than they did, but similar, like I said, then I moved to Florida, totally switched my training, like 360, bam, around a lot of different ideas that were given to me. Some that were great, like I said, I learned from, but a lot of it I kind of went like this with and said, I'm going to have to go back to the way I used to train just a little bit. and but not forgetting that focus on the muscle and training the muscle and stimulating it, but throwing in that intensity a little bit more than I had in the most recent years. And that's what I've been
So like
doing.
a little bit. So you're saying like, because with Ben, it was a lot of like, activations and, just squeezing throughout the range, which I think like how James said, it was probably a great skill for you to learn and then bring it
Yeah.
to the heavier stuff. But
Right.
so when you guys say intense, is that like is it more like almost progressive overload, like heavy weights within the training?
Well, and not even. I think heavy's the wrong term to use there, because it's not a matter of heavy or light.
Right.
It's just a matter of intensity. Like Derek sent me a bent over row video the other day that the one set was like 50 seconds long and probably like 35 reps. Like the first 10 to 15 were great strict, and then as he got moving, form slid, but like his muscle still wasn't exactly tired, so he was able to, just keep moving. And it's like, it's kind of fallen back into the mythology of like still activating the muscle, still doing what's needed, but sometimes you just got to move some weight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's like Ronnie Coleman, like everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but no one wants to squat 800 pounds. Like Ronnie Coleman's squats were not picture perfect 800-pound squats, but he was the man putting 800 pounds on his back and getting down and standing up. And sometimes you just got to do that to fully overload the muscle and make it activate as much and burn out them deep fibers and get everything going.
In my opinion, simply put, if it's a strict, perfect rep, and if that forms, you lose that form just a little bit, that doesn't mean that if you're not doing a perfect rep that you're wrong. That's the difference. If you're not doing a perfect rep, you're wrong. That's a bad way to look at it. And at the same time, if you're training, crazy, you're not thinking about the muscle, or you could possibly get injured, something like that. That doesn't mean you're right either. So the crazy intensity is not always 100% right. And then at the same time, that perfect strict form isn't 100% right either. I think somewhere in between, like he said, get as many reps you can with strict form, with squeezing the muscle, very intensely. And if the form slips just a little bit, like for example, if I'm doing the bent over rows or something, and I start using my hips just a little bit, I think that's okay, as long as I'm not completely like taking it out of my back, for example, and just losing all thought of training my back just to get another rep. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
The problem is most people that lift don't know how to find that happy medium and incorporate all these things. They're either slinging around weight, using a lot of momentum, they're going way too fast through the rep and not feeling the rep, or they're overly cautious where they're trying to do it so almost like they're so scientific with it that it's like you're missing the
it's
one
too
aspect.
Much.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Of getting mean in
So,
the gym. You got to get mean at some point in the gym.
Yeah. Right. And so going off that,
right.
dude, I think the best way I can explain it over this Skype interview is that, really focus on those solid reps. And when you feel in your set, everybody knows when you're working, for example, if you're doing like, if you're doing a bicep curl, that's simple, right? Everybody can feel their biceps contracting. And then when all of a sudden your bicep gets tired, you start swinging it like this. Now you're doing front raises. If you could, that's when you need to be able to differentiate what muscles am I actually working. Am I just getting this rep like this, or am I actually contracting still? And it's okay to give a little bit of, you know what I'm saying? But you got to make sure it's still training the muscle. And whenever you stop feeling it in the muscle you're trying to train, you either need to pause for a second, think about it, reset, and keep going. Or, you know what I'm saying? Or that's when you call it quits for that set and come back again for the next set.
There's also certain exercises that you're going to want to do that with, and others that you're not going to want to do it. Like a flat barbell bench for me with a pec tear, I don't even do it. But if I was to do it, you don't go to complete. I would not go to complete failure with that and struggle with this thing, and then watch the other pec rip. What's the benefit of that? But whereas maybe a cable crossover, I can go to absolute failure with, because if I'm absolutely fatigued, just put it back. So, the bench press is not something. Maybe a barbell squat I wouldn't go to absolute failure with, but a hack where you go out of it, maybe that's something that you can go to absolute failure with. And people, you don't have to go to absolute failure on everything. Pick the right motions to do that with.
Yeah,
Right.
I couldn't agree more with you on that, Gary. That's you literally hit the nail on the head right there.
So as far as
some people just
so
ahead,
like so we started talking about the prep a little bit, and then we got into the training. So what is I'm curious with the strategy. So like you guys did kind of a little pre-prep to clean it up and get everything rolling with some momentum. At this point, so now it's time to drop the hammer. Are you guys aggressive when you come right out of the gate, or do you like to manipulate one variable at a time and squeeze out as much of a response as you can from as little? Or how do you guys, because I've seen it done, a million different ways. So do you guys come out swinging out of the gate, or is it kind of just a gradual wait and see?
So with Derek, everybody's a little bit different, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty familiar with Derek's body. So typically what we like to do with him is I get him cleaned up. I get him on a very nice base diet where he's kind of maintaining, leaning out just a little bit, like what people would call kind of a recomp position,
Sure.
where he's just improving, but body fat's getting a little better each week. From there, what I'll do is our first cut will be pretty aggressive. I'll drop them down. That way we make sure we're in a deficit. We get things rolling down there. From there, I milk every variable out as we go. And that doesn't mean that there can't be more than one change in a week sometimes. But I try to, if we pull down 2 pounds, I'm not going to just pull more food out for no reason or more cardio if I don't think that it's necessary. I try to create a nice taper in and get them down to where things need to be so we're in striking range at a reasonable distance.
Now, is that so like you want to be aggressive and get like a nice response pretty early on, you said, with Derek specifically? I know that client to client, everybody is different. Like you said, you've been with Derek and you know his body really well. With Derek, is it an initial cardio spike, or are you dropping food? Is it a little bit of both?
Usually we'll have cardio in a decent amount year round. We'll
Okay.
bump that up slightly, maybe say from like 3 days to, 3 days at 25 minutes. We may go to 4 days or maybe even 5 days, but at 20 minutes.
Okay.
So the overall duration's not really much change, but more sessions during the day to get him, or more sessions during the week to get his activity levels up. And then the food drop is really where the thing comes in. Derek's body responds very well to low amounts of food. He does not take a lot of food to grow. He does not take, he has to get food down pretty low to start cutting. So we use an aggressive food cut down there to get things going down where we need them to be. I'm sure a lot of people think, oh, Derek's got great genetics. He probably eats 800 carbs and 400 protein and 100 fats coming into the Olympia and blah, blah. And I do have clients that are like that. Derek's not one of them. His food does get pretty low. He's got like naturally fat shredded genetics is what I like to call them, where like very minimal amount of food maintains weight, but he'll still get lean, especially when his body gets rolling. When his body gets rolling, his body just utilizes nutrients better and better and better and better. Totally. We have to be very careful, especially going into the end of how much food and refeeds and things like that. And that's actually why, we kind of take a lot of heat, like last year. We'll just throw it out there on the table. Like a week out, Derek did some burgers. A lot of people, James doesn't know what he's doing. He ate those burgers. He was fat, blah, 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 yada, yada. Well, we have to use large calorie spikes all in one duration, because if I spread that amount of calories out over a week, he would gain 6 pounds, literally gain 6 pounds of tissue, not of water weight. After a show, Derek can go from 212 to 235 and still be shredded and peeled, not holding water, and add 500 calories and do that. His body's just so ready to respond when food gets low. So we give large spikes to help his body out, help it rebuild, give some satiation to his mental state as well as body. And then we pull his food way back down and get everything back rolling. His food does get pretty low. Cardio gets cardio honestly probably
Moderate.
gets higher than what I like, but a lot of that has to do with how low we have to get him down to make 212.
Right.
I
Do you ever worry about that? Like him, like in the off season, if you see him, I mean, I don't know Derek's exact highest weight in the off season, but I've seen him pretty heavy. Have you ever seen pictures like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I don't know if we get you down to 212 right now. Like,
Derek, you want to answer that?
Yeah, man. It's not purpose that we're trying to get up to over 250, but it just happens, man. Like every time. So I talk about like, after my competitions, I try to eat clean and stay on a regiment until about around Christmas time, first of the year. The last couple of years I went to the Philippines. Now, it's partially because my fiance is from the Philippines. We go see her family, but the reason I'm willing to say, okay, let's do that is because it's like, if I stay in the States and I have access to a gym and my normal food and lifestyle, I'm going to be in the gym training and I will be 270 or 275, not even purposely, just kind of just by working out and eating and going home and sleeping and resting. So when I give myself maybe a couple months to just do whatever and eat like a normal person, 3 normal meals a day, real light if I can, maybe a little bit of working out just to maintain the shape and the size and stuff. Once I get a hold of James, like, hey man, like I'm back. It's January and ready to get rolling again. He'll always give me my first meal plan, and I'm like, hey man, like, I think that's a little bit more food than I need to be eating. He's like, bro, it's not even more than 3,000 calories. I'm like, I'm telling you, like, if I eat 3,000 or more, I'm growing. And that's what happened again this year. It's like I went from 235 to over 252. And I mean, how many weeks did we just say? Probably like 4, like 5 or 6 weeks. Yeah. Like 5 or 6 weeks. It was just like, dude, I just keep growing, and it's almost like I'm not even really accumulating that much fat. It's just piling on. And the guys I've been training with, my friends down here in Florida, it's like they're like, dude, I don't believe my eyes. Every 2-3 days, you look like a different person. And I went up to New York. I went and talked to some of the head officials and some of the other pro athletes up in at Bev's gym. Back in I think it was February, it was right before the week before the Arnold, where I just kind of couple weeks training a little bit harder, and like I said, I was 235. I looked not that great, to be honest, but I knew the process of how my body responds and the way me and James work and things like that. And like I said, I came back, and now you saw pictures like from a week or two ago. It was over 250 and not that fat, really.
But yeah, to answer your question, definitely, Gary, and we try to keep him around mid 240s, and actually he got up to 252, but I think last week we had him back down to 247, 240.
That's where I'm at right now.
So pulled him back down a little bit, and a lot of that was just water manipulation and things like that, getting more water in them and a little more moving, things like that. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a range where I'm like, hey, we got to cut this off or we're never getting back down
Speaking
there.
of which,
so definitely.
Okay, so hearing all that, just as a fan, I'm thinking to myself, when is this kid just gonna unleash it and get fucking crazy huge?
ooh.
So, for the fans right now, a little bit of a controversial question, but all things go right. The Olympia goes on as scheduled. They raise your hand. You're the 212 champ. Is that now when you guys unleash it and start bringing it to the open?
Who's answering this one?
I think there's a lot of variables there, man. There's a lot of variables that would have to take into account. A lot of those go down to how hard we have to pull Derek in to even make 212s this year. How the show ends up, when the show actually happens. That's a huge factor. There's a difference in having a full year to prep versus 6 months.
Right.
Especially if you want to try to add 20 pounds of tissue.
All right, hold on. So let me paint like a hypothetical, and then you guys just say yes or no. Fair?
Fair.
All right, so the Olympia happens in
Maybe.
September. The pull down to 212 is exactly the same as it was last year, and Derek wins.
You go first, James.
I think what we would do is we would take the 12 weeks after and we would see what happens with trying to push some size and see where we think we could get in a year. And monitor that to where we didn't get where we couldn't get back to 212 if we didn't think the size was going to be attainable. We wouldn't blow up to a fat slobby 275 just trying to put size and then not be able to get back down to 212 because we're maxed at 218. Do I think Derek could be competitive at 218 or 220 in the open stage? Absolutely. But do I think he could be very, very competitive at 230 on stage? 100%. And I also think that with the proper timing, the proper alignment, and the proper focus, in 1 year's time, Derek could go from 212 on stage to 230 to 235 on stage. I have no doubt about that.
And then that's very dangerous. Like, not just competitive, that's dangerous in any show.
Oh, I thought I wasn't sure how you meant dangerous, but but to follow up with your dangerous, a lot of people will say, "Oh, that's dangerous. You guys are gonna blow the back out of supplements, and you're gonna do this."
Probably be healthier.
Not true.
It doesn't he doesn't require all that. Like,
he does not require any of that, and it would simply be a matter of food and training. Stimulus for a solid year, and the way he responds. It's just like he said, like, yes, he did take a month and a half off, was 235. We got things going. He's like 247 now. So, yeah, there's some hyper recomp going on there, but the same thing happens out of a show. And if he ate to his capacity, which is literally Derek can eat an unlimited amount of food until, like, as he's sitting on the toilet, he can still be pushing it in. And he says he's not full. I don't know. I don't understand it.
I'm like, dude, I'm not full.
If he ate to his capacity and trained to his capacity, I have no doubt 20 pounds of stage weight could be added and with equal levels of conditioning.
All right, I'll give you my thoughts, my feelings. So to be 100% frank, I can't give you a yes or no, but this is exactly how I feel and what I've said before. I actually feel like a caged animal that just is like saying, no, you can't be your best. You know what I mean? I don't think my best is 212 by any means. It's just like, you have to be good. Like, that's what James and I joked about the other day. He goes, it kind of sucks that we have to just say, okay, we're going to be good again this year. Like, you know what I mean? Not saying that we can't bring something phenomenal to the 212 stage. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we can and will. And, but like I said, like, I take time away in my off season to just say, okay, I need to stay within this weight cap. And to me, as much as that sounds great, it's like frustrating because, I'm sitting, I'm in the Philippines and I'm thinking, my God, man, I want to be home. I want to eat, sleep, and train and freaking kill this, man. And like, I just want to see what all I can be and just daily just grind all year long and be all that I can be my best. But it's like, wait a second, we have to make sure the weight stays low. We're, keep training hard, but like, diet pretty much year round. And it's like, this, to me, it's like almost like, it's not that I can't make improvements because I can already see that my physique has made these fine, detailed improvements from last year to this year. But it's like, man, if I could just maximize the possibility, the opportunity, I mean, I could be so much more. I just know it, and I'm just like waiting for the right time when we feel like it's best. Being honest,
being on that borderline's tough, man.
Sucks, but it's.
And especially I mean, like James said, though, I've seen pictures of you at 228, 230, where it's like, dude, I feel like this guy could slap a tan on and go win Tampa looking like this.
Yeah, trust me, I've talked about the Tampa Pro the last 2 years to James, but I've guest posed that same weekend too, and I told him, hey, what about the Tampa Pro this year? And he's like, we got to win that title, bro, at the Olympia. And I said, you're right, man.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, like I said, man, even after last year's Olympia, when I came out to see you guys that week,
Yeah.
you know, I was in the hotel room and I texted James. I was like, man, let's do a freaking open show. And he's just like, chill out. You know, just we got a plan. Let's just, you know, he's kind of like my mental sanity. You know what I mean? Like he's always had a plan for me. And when he opens his mouth and says, you know, I think we can accomplish this, you know, at this time this year, I'm saying, man, why are you putting limitations on me? You know, like for him, it's like, this is our goal. For me, I'm like, why are you limiting my goal right now? You know, because the first year I competed, he was like, maybe we won't do junior nationals this year. Like, let's just do our first show. I go, dude, I'm telling you, I'm going to win my first show and we're going to go to junior nationals and I'm win my class. And he's like, just chill, bro. And I'm like, I'm telling you, man. And then the same thing, the off season from 2015 to 2016, he's like, you know, if you listen to me and you stick to the plan, you might gain 10 or 12 pounds of lean tissue by next year. And I'm like, well, why do you keep doubting me, bro? Like, you keep saying, like, all I'm going to do is gain 10 or 12 pounds of tissue. That year, I gained like 25 pounds of stage weight with better conditioning. And that was pretty much 2 years back to back. 2017, he's like, you know, that was the year I went to USA's, Tampa, and the Olympia. He goes, all right, so the likeliness of you winning the USA's is very good. He's like, but we still have to win. He's like, if you win, yeah, let's go to Tampa. And
Oh,
We lost him.
lost them.
Ah.
I think we lost Gary too.
No,
you're there.
no, he's good. He was just holding that posture. It's like he was frozen. All right.
I'll kind of finish that story as he's at, but we really didn't talk about Tampa until we were at USA's. Prejudging was done. And then I was like, let's jump in Tampa. We got a week out. We see the lineup. It's a good lineup. We can be competitive. We lost you, so I'm finishing the story for you, Derek. And so we get down there, and he's like, we're going to win Tampa. We're going to go to the Olympia. And I'm like, dude, let's win Tampa and then maybe do the Olympia. And he's like, maybe do the Olympia. And I'm like, but in my mind, I'm thinking, it's not yes or no to not do it. I'm like, you've already been prepping like 24, 25 weeks. My concern was his body holding up for another 7 weeks to come in on the Olympia stage as good as possible. So wins Tampa, and then we're talking about it, and I'm like, let's head down the route. If I see where you start fading out, then we'll pull back. And he's like, we're doing the Olympia. We're doing it. And I'm like, no, dude, I agree. He always makes it out like I tell him he shouldn't have done the Olympia. I didn't tell him that. I said, we got to make sure you're your best. You're going to be a 200-pounder on the Olympia stage against Flex, who's 220 on stage. Like, you're going to give up a lot of size. We can't afford to have you, you know, start reeling back and not be your best. You've got to step on that stage the best you've ever been, better than USA's, better than Tampa. And I think we did that. His body held up great. He was still fresh. We did take like a 2-week break period before we hammered down again going to the Olympia, and it gave him just enough time to kind of heal up and recoup. And, you know, we went in there and got fifth that first year. And, you know, it was never a not. It was a, you know, I feel like it's my responsibility to make Derek make smart choices and the right choices. It's Derek's responsibility to go 100% forward.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly right, man.
And
but I see his limitations.
Especially as you get down and, you know, you're in shape and, you know, emotions are high. You win your pro card. You win the USA's. Like, your mind must be all over the place. James is there. That's the guy that should be kind of guiding the ship, because, you know, we get in shape and our brains just don't work right. And then emotions are high, and it's a whole, it could be a mess of a situation if you don't have a good coach like that. So, you know, you guys have a great rapport.
Still coach and athlete at this point because of this guy. Some of the text message, he's like, bro, just, you're fine.
Joe, can you imagine being at the prejudging of USA's, already planning the pro show coming after knowing that
planning
you won?
the pro debut that you're going to win to go to the Olympia? Yeah, no, I can't imagine that.
Possible.
If I I got off stage to the USA's in dead center and knew that I was going to back handspring through that freaking hallway, like that.
Dude,
After
after
at that point.
after I won the USA's, I remember that James and I were talking. We were all excited and stuff, and I knew that J.M. Mannion was about to interview me, and I had some interviews backstage. And James said something along the lines of, "Boy, wouldn't it be funny if you just looked at J.M. and said, 'How do I get my contract for the Tampa Pro this weekend?'" And I said that in the interview, and everybody just stopped and goes, "We will make that happen. Don't you worry."
See, you got to put it out into the universe, man. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was cool, man. It was
Yeah.
good times for sure. But now it's
But all right.
time to finally accomplish that goal we've been set in stone back after 2017. Man, it's still eluding us, and it's time that we take a hold of that one.
Yeah, we're ready for it, man. We're all ready to see it. Hopefully, you guys get the chance to display the work and go up and get that title.
Yeah.
We're at like 46 minutes, so I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. I really appreciate both of you making the time and coordinating this with us. Gary, did you have anything else you wanted to hit with these guys before we let them go, or are we good?
No, I'm pretty much covered with the update and everything like that. So we're good.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, again, just want to thank you guys. Thanks to James. Thanks to Derek. This has been another episode of the Animal Pakcast during the quarantine. And until next time, guys, take care. We're out.